Well, here we are, arriving at another one of Nintendo's big franchises. Honestly, it was only a matter of time. I mean, not that I didn't play other things as a kid. I definitely had some options. PlayStation, Sega Genesis. Those were part of my collection growing up. Though I didn't have all of the systems at the same time, I kind of jumped from one console to the other. I like to play a bit of everything. Doesn't really matter what console or company made the game, I just like to play games. If it's something that I have the ability to play, I'm gonna get to it. Alright, got a little off topic there. So, Zelda. Legend of Zelda. I feel like this series doesn't exactly need a huge introduction. I feel like everyone is more or less on the same page, right? I mean, it has legend in the name. Just like basically every other Nintendo game at the time, Zelda became immensely influential. You can still feel the impact of this game series to this day. It's near impossible to escape. With fans the world over and well over 30 games, this franchise is monolithic. The only other games that hold a candle to it in this regard are Mario and Pokemon. If you have played or heard of video games, odds are you know about Link and Zelda, at least to some capacity. Alright, look, this series, it's gonna be a long one. So, to save myself at least some sanity, I'm going to be breaking it down into chunks and then releasing them when I am able. This first chunk is going to be the original Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. I'll get to the others in time. If you saw my update video on the plan, you already know what's going on with this. I have some fun ideas in store for the other groups of videos, so, keep an eye out for them when they show up, yeah? For now, though, how's it going, everyone? My name is Leon, and I want to welcome you all to The Legend of Zelda Retrospective. (1986), the year that Legend of Zelda was released in Japan. It didn't hit America and the PAL region until, 1987. Honestly, not much of a wait, but long enough for hungry gamers at the time. This game was supposed to be the opposite of Mario. You see, the Super Mario game was pretty linear and straightforward. You literally just ran to the right. Zelda, on the other hand, was meant to be more open and somewhat mysterious. Or at least that's what the director, Shigeru Miyamoto, was looking to make. The project was headed, of course, by Miyamoto, Takeshi Tezuka, and the dev team of R&D number 4 in Nintendo. The overall idea was for Miyamoto to make a game that kind of felt like what he did as a kid, exploring his local area where he lived. Open and explorable. Influenced by other games like the Black Onyx and Ultima, the idea was to just be as open and mysterious as possible. Find a cave, go in it. Find a dungeon, go in that. Uncover all the secrets and mysteries. At some point, they wanted to try and implement time travel into the title, but that quickly got pushed aside. They were already hitting the limits with what the Famicom or the NES hardware was capable of. In fact, the whole second quest idea came from these limitations. Originally, the idea was for all of those dungeons to be in one single playthrough, but due to some communication and development hiccups, they ended up changing how that worked. Which, Miyamoto was fine with. He felt a smaller number of dungeons per quest worked better for the game as a whole. Other scrapped ideas included burning large trees instead of just some bushes and, draining water out of the 7th level dungeon. That's a lot to try and put into an old 8-bit cart back in the day. Even Koji Kondo, the composer responsible for nearly every song in Mario and Zelda titles, had some problems with the development. They wanted to use the song Bolero by Maurice Ravel for the title screen. However, due to copyrights, they weren't really able to do that. Could you imagine if they had, though? Could you imagine booting up a Zelda title and hearing this? Honestly, I think we lucked out. The title theme for Zelda is so iconic, I don't really want to be in the other timeline where that doesn't exist. This game became a near instant success for Miyamoto and the rest of R&D4, selling over 6.5 million copies and basically birthing the action-adventure gameplay style as we know it today. Sure, others came before Zelda, and many have come since, but not too many are singing the praises of the adventure title on Atari 2600, Gameplay. Okay, alright. So, gameplay in this title is fairly simplistic. You got Link, you got 4 directions on the D-pad, and you have 2 action buttons. And, 2 menu buttons. Not exactly a ton to work with, but they may do. The D-pad moves Link in, you'll never guess, 4 directions. You got up, down, left, and right. Your sword is permanently on the A button, and any other usable item is on the B button when you collect them. Hitting start brings down a menu for you to select your B button item with. Those include boomerang, bombs, bow and arrow, potions, a flute, a candle, some meat, a letter, and a magic rod. Many of these can be upgraded, the bow and arrow being probably the most important one, although the upgraded magic rod is pretty great. A few of those items get swapped out for others. The letter, when shown to an old woman, grants you potions to buy, and the meat is used to get past one guy in a dungeon. Certain items are passive. The raft, the ladder, the magic defense rings, the magic key, the power bracelet, and shield upgrades. And 2 other swords that you can find. They're used to get past certain obstacles and solve some puzzles. That said, the ladder is probably one of the better non-damage inflicting passives you can get. Makes certain rooms in dungeons so much easier to get past. Being that this is a NES game, the controls are good, if not incredibly stiff. Link can face one of 4 directions and attacks in a stabbing-like motion, in the direction that he faces. This is fine, it's just a bit cumbersome, especially if you get surrounded by a bunch of things all at once. Looking at you, Wizrobes. Blue ones are the worst. Anyway, enemies are actually color-coded, and once you learn this, you can get an idea about how tough they are based on your sword's level. Generally speaking, red and orange are fairly weak, and the blue enemies can be pretty tough. Certain bosses have some gimmicks to them, like Dodongos need bombs to kill, and this eyeball thing, Digdogger? Digdogger? Okay. Needs to be weakened with the flute before you can attack it. Otherwise, most things need to be hit with the sword a lot. One notable exception is the Dark Nut, which is damaged with the sword, yes, but only from the back. Have fun trying to clear out a room full of them. It's too many. The main objective is to find and clear out the 8 dungeons scattered around the land of Hyrule. How you go about that is more or less up to you. Certain dungeons can only be entered if you, find the entrance, which can be obstructed by mountain walls or, bushes, I guess. Others can be freely entered and exited whenever you want. The order in which you dive into the dungeons is set by you as the player and is kind of based off the equipment you have. You don't have to do them all in order. If you got the right gear and the health to do it, you can clear them in just about any order you want. Just be careful of the Wizrobe dungeon. It's number 6, I think. Definitely make sure you have some defensive items and potions for that one. On the world map, you can traverse just about the whole thing. Certain areas need certain items, sure, but for the most part, if you want to get to any part of the map, you can. Speaking of the map, check this out. Check this sick map up right here in this top corner. It's a solid gray rectangle. Not exactly super helpful, really. It's good to know where you are, I guess, at a glance, but that's about it. Otherwise, you better pull out that map that came with a box copy of the game and or get a pen and paper out and make your own map, because if you don't, you might get a bit lost as you move on the overworld. Of course, today you can just pull up a map on your phone or computer or whatever and go from there, but where's the fun in that? Once you have enough gear and you feel ready for a dungeon, go ahead and enter one. See what you might be able to find. Each dungeon has an item of some kind, and each one has its own map, which actually is pretty useful as opposed to the overworld one. It shows you exactly where you are in every room. Also, there's a compass. Every dungeon has some small keys as well to open up locked doors. These keys can be brought to other dungeons, so if you run out of keys in one, you might have to try and go to another dungeon to get more keys. That said, you can leave a dungeon with a bunch of extra keys. Or, if you want, you can buy some at one of the several shops. Though, honestly, you don't really need to do that unless you really messed up somehow. Each dungeon has a boss to defeat and a fragment of the Triforce of Wisdom to collect. It's your goal to collect them all and face Ganon. How you go about that? Well, that's up to you. Alright, so at this point, I'm sure a bunch of people are wondering, what about the timeline? To that I say, just wait, alright? This is literally video number 1 in a series that's going to take a hot minute. Maybe I'll make a timeline video for the wrap-up? Or maybe a bonus video? For now, though, let's just get the games under our belts before we even try to attempt that timeline. It gets really convoluted exceptionally quickly. Make sure you sub up for that one. You wouldn't want to miss it. For that matter, why not do all the other YouTube type things, huh? Likes, subscribes, comments, the whole 9 yards, as it were. I appreciate it. Alright, let's talk about how I came to play this game. I was maybe around 10 or 11 before I ever tried to play this game. It came out almost a year before I was even born, so it's not like I got to play it day 1 or year 1, or really in the first decade of it being around. I think I played Link to the Past first. I don't think I actually played the original until that promo disc for Wind Waker came out on GameCube, so I might have been even older than I think. I gotta say, even back then, playing the original Zelda, that was rough, buddy. Don't get me wrong, I totally see how this game came to be the pillar it is, and how it helped shape all of gaming. Ooh, but going back to 1986? Ooh, that's rough. That is rough. There was a phrase, or a term? It was something along the lines of Nintendo hard, or NES hard. That's what comes to mind. Nowadays, you might not exactly associate Nintendo with difficult games, but back then? Oh, back then, absolutely it was. Every game beaten was a triumph. Some games back then were easy enough, sure, but for the most part, a bunch were just maybe a little too much in terms of difficulty. Now, part of that might have been the limitations of the system, some of it might have even just been bad design. But whether it was intended or not, all of it was difficult. If you played this as a kid and beat it back then, before the internet was really a thing, man, my hat's off to you. That is no small feat. For me, though, this game falls in the I don't really want to play it again category. I find the controls to be quite a hindrance, and it relies way too much on hidden locations. I hope you know how to farm bombs, because you will be bombing every wall and burning every bush you can think of burning. It was novel to go back and play this for the retrospective, but unless it's part of something else in the future, I don't think I'll be delving back into the first adventure in Hyrule. That's just me, though. If this is your bag, go ahead and flaunt that, my friend. All the more power to you. My pain points aside, nobody can deny the legacy that this game created. So many other titles have spawned out of this. We would be here all day if I tried to list them. As of the making of this video, the next Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, is set to be released pretty soon. The internet and people the world over are all but foaming at the mouth if they are fans of the games. Breath of the Wild was such a high point for the series because it sort of went back to the idea of just go anywhere and do anything. In fact, a bunch of open world games can probably trace some roots back to this very game on the Nintendo. It's funny to me that some of the most influential games that are still around today are owned by Nintendo. I don't know what the deal was. Maybe it was all just right place and right time. But it's crazy that these titles have been going strong for almost 40 years. It really is something to behold. I know for me personally, I became a big fan of the games when Ocarina of Time came out. I was finally at an age where I can really get into games as more than just a thing to do. I really got into the stories they were trying to tell, and that love and appreciation is just as strong today. What was your first Zelda game? How did that impact your own personal gaming experience? If you haven't played one, or just plain aren't a fan of the series, what's one game that had this kind of effect on you? I'm genuinely curious. Alrighty then, it's story time. Like I said, I won't be getting into the where this fits in with the supreme lore of the whole franchise, just yet. This is going to be the first game as it was presented to us on its release all those years ago. I imagine this will be a somewhat short segment, but if you haven't played the game and want to experience it for yourself, go ahead and skip to the time code here on screen, or dip into the description down there, click on the same time code, it'll take you right to where we get to the wrap up. Gonna give you a little bit to make that choice. And while we're waiting for those people to do that thing, have you guys heard that one Zelda song that sounds strangely like System of a Down? If you haven't, give it a look. Kind of sounds like the lead singer Serge Tankian, but turns out it was a guy by the name of Joe Pellman. He made the song back in 1998, and because the internet was wild back then, when people downloaded it off of Napster. Oh, good God, I'm talking about Napster on a YouTube video in the year 2023. Jesus. Anyway, when people downloaded it, often there was no credit to the band on the file, and because this guy just happened to sound like Serge, it got credited to System of a Down. So, yeah, there you go. More random knowledge for your next trivia night, I guess. And all those people who skipped will never know. Right, so back to topic. The game's manual outlines the backstory fairly well. The game also does this, but it's not as deep, really only because of hardware limitations. The game itself gives a very brief intro. You want the goods? You gotta find that instruction booklet, do a little reading. That said, the booklet has some very interesting art and additional story bits to look at. It'll even show you the first 2 dungeon locations and advise you to make your own maps. They really didn't have to go that hard on the manual, but man, that was half the fun back then. Anyway, the story starts off by describing Hyrule and the legend of the Triforce. The Triforce is a series of golden triangles that form one large triangle. Strangely enough, this game only talks about the Triforce of Wisdom, which Princess Zelda broke into 8 separate pieces and hid in the dungeons, and the Triforce of Power, which Ganon came into possession of. There is absolutely no mention of the Triforce of Courage in the original Legend of Zelda game. That's kind of weird to think about. It's not important yet, but it will be. Soon. Zelda, after hearing of Ganon ransacking the kingdom, asked her handmaiden Impa to go and find a hero, some courageous soul, as she knew Ganon was closing in on her. Impa left without delay and came across Link, but only after she had been hunted down by some of Ganon's underlings. Link manages to save Impa from a fate worse than death, according to the manual, not sure what that is, and I don't really want to know, but upon being rescued, Impa tells Link all the information he needs. Impa believes this boy to be a true hero. It would be funny if after doing all of that, Link was just like, nah, I'm out. I mean, the game wouldn't exist, but imagine doing that, saving an old woman from death, getting all that information dumped on you, and then being expected to follow through on it. I feel like most people would probably bounce. Not Link, though. He's got an adventurous spirit and the courage to face evil. This is more or less where you, as the player, take over control of Link. The adventure is yours. My first bit of advice: walk into that cave and grab a sword. Then the world is your oyster. You spend the next however long getting absolutely trucked by the game. I mean, you adventure into all sorts of mysterious caves and dungeons, you fight dragons, get bows, arrows, upgrade your tunic, fight in a graveyard, find some better swords, and all the while you gain strength and wisdom on your journey, all of which match the courage Link has to constantly face the unknown. Dungeon after dungeon, dragons, Octoroks, Lionels, and the Wizrobes, and every other creature Ganon can throw at Link, each met and bested. After crossing the land of Hyrule and collecting up as much gear, strength, and exactly 8 Triforce pieces, it is time. Death Mountain awaits. The time has come to traverse the toughest dungeon in the game. I hope you're able to collect some of the best gear. You're gonna need those silver arrows and the red magic ring, level 3 sword. It's a pain otherwise, and I'm sure you can't really beat Ganon without the arrows. So go and collect as much as you can. When you do, it's at long last time to see Ganon. And he's a pigman, an invisible pigman, who also does extreme damage, even with the upgraded defense. This fight boils down to stab at where you think Ganon is. You have to pay attention to the attacks he's making and stab in that general direction. More often than not, you'll end up hitting him. Thankfully, he doesn't take too many hits, and once he's stunned from all that damage, strike him with the silver arrow. Once he bursts into flames and is left as a pile of ash on the ground, collect that Triforce of Power and free Zelda. The game is over, and Link is named the hero of Hyrule. Roll credits! Oh, and one more thing. Once you beat the game, you can play it again in a sort of New Game Plus mode. You don't really get to carry over anything, but the layout of the world has been changed ever so slightly, and there's some new dungeon layouts that are there for you to explore. I believe the game is also just a touch harder. You want a fun hint? You can access the second quest right off the rip by naming Link Zelda when you make the file. Second quest ready and available if you want. I play a little bit of the second quest, and it's alright. I mean, if I were a kid in the 80s playing this off and on for months to years, I'm sure I would have enjoyed the semi-new layout. But nowadays, I'm good. No need to run it back like that. I got other Zelda games to explore. Told you that story section wouldn't be all that long. Welcome back to all of you who skipped ahead. You're back just in time for the ending thoughts. So here's the long and short of this game. It's important, very important, in terms of the action-adventure genre and style of game. Nobody can really argue otherwise. But man, is it rough. I am so glad I played this on the Switch. I won't lie, that rewind feature saved me a ton of time and agony. Back when I was a kid playing this for the first time, I had all the time in the world, really. So restarting wasn't all that bad when you died in a dungeon, but now, forget it. I got too much other stuff to do as an adult. Add to that this whole YouTube thing I'm doing, and man, thank God that rewind feature is here. And as for my favorite enemies in the game, the Wizrobes, I cannot express how much I do not care for the Wizrobes in this game. They hit like absolute trucks. Have any of you seen the opening to Zombieland Saga? I don't want to deviate too far into something else, but that opening scene where the truck just obliterates Sakura, that is every wizrobe in Dungeon 6. As I record the footage, I label every file with information and numbers so I can track what I need to find, and the file name should say it all. NES hard, man. Geez, even now it's brutal. That aside, as I feel that is something that applies to specifically me, though I'm sure others might feel at least somewhat similar, this game serves as an important starting point for a long-running series. It is pivotal in its creation and serves as an important reminder of the roots the series started with. For that reason alone, I recommend at least checking it out if you haven't played it. I don't know that I would recommend going any deeper than that, though. It's just a little too unforgiving. But hey, maybe you like that kind of unrelenting difficulty, in which case, go for it, man. All told, it's a fine game and rightfully deserves its place in the pantheon of the greatest games. Just do me a favor, watch out for those wizrobes. Join me next time as we change up the formula a little bit and see Link take on a whole other adventure. See you then. Hey everybody, welcome to the end card. Another one in the books. Hope you liked the video and some personal anecdotes about, well, my own experience with the game. There is more to come as we venture ever deeper into the Zelda universe. We have only just begun to adventure. Have the wisdom to learn from failure, the power to continue against the odds, and the courage to be yourself when faced with adversity. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care.